Hi, this is Nikki Woods, and for today's author chat, we are talking with Julie Marie Mansfield, who, to me, and I'll let Julie explain it a little bit better or correct me if I'm wrong, has really built a movement based on her book. So I wanted to talk to her about a few things about, how she got started writing the book, but also the result and how this book has helped to further her message. But I want to tell you a little bit about her first. They say that few things irk Julie Marie Mansfield more than the people who know a child is being sexually abused and say or do nothing. She herself is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and has now made it her mission to help inspire the humanization of survivors, to help give a face to the harrowing childhood sexual abuse statistics that say that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually violated before reaching adulthood. She further wants to help foster a culture of prevention. It's a little bit different for Julie because Julie's movement is based in Jamaica, where she was born and raised. It did end in the United States almost a decade later, but it's certainly a different kind of fight in Jamaica, and I'll let her tell us about that as well. She has gone on to be more than a survivor. She is really a success story, and she says that she claims everything that happened to her along the way as the foundation for who she is today. Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. So let's start. Just tell me a little bit about you before we even get into your story. Tell me a little bit about you and who you are, and then let's talk about your book.
I'm probably one of the craziest people you'll ever meet. Crazy good. Crazy good. It's a good crazy. Where I absolutely love life and, all that it has to offer, all that it brings. I won't appreciate sunshine if I've never felt rain. That's just my philosophy. I won't know freedom if I've never been imprisoned. So I take everything as a learning method, as evidence that there is beauty in all of life. That's just how I roll. I have 2 grown girls who I have to keep out of my closet, and they are my inspiration for what I do these days. It's always been, but more so these days because it's just watching them blossom into the adult women that they are. It's just been a beauty for me to sit back, watch, and enjoy. And that's it. I love to travel, love to eat, love to sing karaoke.
I've learned that just from stalking your Facebook page. You have been to some phenomenal places, and really, I mean, you're a gorgeous woman. You have a great personality, and I think for most people, because I will count myself among them. From the outside looking in, without knowing your story, you do live a charmed life. And I think that's why it's so not shocking necessarily, but definitely surprising to learn your history. And you do put that history in a book. And when I met you, Julie, and you told me the name of the name of your book, I told you I would buy it just based on the title alone because it's a great title. The title is Maybe God Was Busy, and it's an unfiltered memoir of growing up behind the tourist veil of Jamaica, one of the most beloved islands in the world. And it looks at a childhood that's interrupted by chronic generational and societal sexual abuse, from molestation by one uncle to incest to rape by the church brother to rape by the voodoo practitioner charged with saving a dying brother to a pregnancy and anesthetic-free abortion at 15 to cousins falling victim to incest. Everything is revealed. And it really is a raw, emotional, but in a sense, a really beautiful depiction of you and who you are in your story, and beautiful in that it's so rich, and it's so just so moving that I couldn't put it down, even though there were times that I really wanted to, because it's so painful even just reading your story. But in the end, I think that of who you are and because of your honesty and because of, you know, how you flourished. It's just a truly beautiful story. So tell me about a little bit about your growing up and your history and what people will read in the book.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, looking back at it's only in looking back at my childhood I realized how idyllic it was, and you know, having traveled and listened to other people's stories and all that stuff, and me just running down to the river or picking a fruit and wiping it on your clothes and eating it because it was so absolutely natural and organic. It's only in looking back, it's only in the reflection that you go, wow, that was fantastic. And then to have that sort of juxtaposed with some of the abuse, and I mean some real hardcore abuse, not just the sexual abuse as if that's not bad enough, but physical abuse, and watching all kinds of violence and being immune to it somehow because it became entertainment, really. And you'll read all about that in the book. You know, I must say something about the title, and one of the reasons I chose that title, Maybe God Was Busy, is because, you know, as an 8-year-old child going through some of those things, I had to wonder where he was, and was he busy with some folks in Africa or busy
right.
in England or busy elsewhere, and my suffering wasn't on par with the rest of the world. So that's one reason for the title. The other reason really is Jamaica is, for a tiny little country, barely a dot on the map, it's got the most churches per square mile of any nation in the world. You know, so we're very religious people. And I couldn't understand how, for people so religious and so, you know, so rooted in faith, how God could allow some of those things to happen. That's my 8-year-old mind questioning where God was when I was going through my thing. So, again, you know, it's just I wrote it from a point of reflection, really. I started out journaling to sort of empty my mind so I wouldn't go absolutely crazy. And someone read the journal with my permission, of course, and encouraged me to publish it because, you know, he thought it would be helpful to a lot of folks. And lo and behold, he was absolutely right, because every time I open my mouth and speak about it, the number of people who are coming out and saying, this happened to me too, this happened to me too, it's unreal. It's really unbelievable, the number of people who've been affected.
And we'll talk a little bit more about specifically CSA in Jamaica. But for you, when was your first recollection that something was really, really wrong in your family?
It's strange. It's really kind of strange because I remember my first experience with childhood sexual abuse. I was 8 years old, and I had no idea what sex was. I mean, I'm 8 years old, running around, you know, catching butterflies and that kind of stuff. That was my life. And so to be introduced in such a violent way, and I knew, even though no one had told me that this was not normal or this was wrong, I knew enough that it felt bad, it felt wrong, and so I went and told my mother, and you know, sadly nothing was done. And then I just remember other uncles, just their type of love or their type of dialogue just did not feel right, even as an 8 or 9-year-old child. It just didn't feel right, and so I did everything in my power to protect myself, you know, as much as an 8-year-old child can. You know, one uncle, and I must say this, I have 8 maternal uncles, and 4 of them are known abusers. 4 of them are known abusers. So it's pretty widespread in my family. And when I decided I was going to publish the book and did all I could to alert folks in my family so that no one would be broadsided, the number of people putting their hands up in my family saying it happened to them as well was just unbelievable, like properly unbelievable. And so I suffered all those years thinking I was the only one, when in fact there were several of us suffering in silence as well. And so I knew early on that there was something wrong with my family. I didn't quite know what it was and how to put it in context and all that stuff, because again, the mind of an 8-year-old child is to be free and to enjoy childhood and not to be burdened with the ills of the family, and especially something like childhood sexual abuse.
So talk to me a little bit about your mother and your mother's role in your story. You said you were 8 years old and you went and told her, and she didn't quite believe you, even though she must have known, you know, that something wasn't quite right in the family. And I remember when I met you, you talked about your mother. And just from before I had read your story, my assumption, and I'm sure that it's probably true, is that you and your mother are really, really close.
Yeah, we actually used to dress alike. Like quite literally went out and bought the same stuff. That's how close we have been. And for me, as a going back to the first time this happened, and I went and told her, I just could not, and I still can't fathom why she didn't do more to protect me. And going through my various therapies and up and down the Eastern Seaboard. And at one point, I actually had my mother and both my sisters in a room and tape recorder because I was determined once and for all to get to the bottom of this. And I told them the session was being recorded, and everybody shared their stories. And as it turned out, both my sisters were molested as well. And as my mother was about to talk about her own experiences, she looked over, saw the tape recorder, and that was it. She just sort of climbed up and never spoke about it again until I told her I was writing the book. And she just sort of very, very nonchalantly said, if anything happened, it wasn't my father, which was kind of telling, but didn't do enough for me to sort of shed light on her story. And I know some things happened, but again, she refuses to talk about it. And so now I find myself in a very sort of peculiar relationship with my mother, where I love her, I adore her, she's my mother, but I still can't reconcile why she did not protect me or do more, really, talk about it, something to sort of help break the cycle within the family. It's a really tough relationship we have right now.
And so, what about you and your sisters?
Well, it's kind of strange because, and in the book, I don't want to give away too much, but I wrote about what my sister's husband did to my child, and sadly enough, she refuses to talk to me. After the book came out, she just flat out refuses to talk to me, and so. My thing is with that, the sin of me writing about what her husband did to my child is a greater sin than what he actually did to my child. And I have a friend who very sort of poignantly said, writing this book is like turning the lights on in a dark room. The cockroaches are going to scurry. And I don't want to call my sister a cockroach, heaven forbid, but her choosing to not talk to me because I wrote about what her husband did to my child is just absolutely outrageous. It's and I can sit here and try to wrap my brain around it, but you just can't make sense out of nonsense. And so I've moved on with my life, and she knows if and when she's ready, I'm here. But until then, I have a job to do, and that is to help protect kids so that they don't have to endure some of the stuff that I did.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk more about that. But one thing I do want to talk about is your decision to write the book, and as you said, the fallout that you've experienced. One of the biggest things that people ask me, or I have to coach my clients through, especially when they're telling this kind of a story, is do I ask permission? Do I let people know? How do you go about telling some ugly truths when you're still connected to certain people? And so I would like for you to talk about it. You said you talked to your family and all of that, but the other people, the uncles that may still be around, just others. How hard was it for you to share this story?
It wasn't. It's probably one of the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And that might sound a bit strange, but
Well, not knowing you, I think that, and I think that people understand a little bit better after we tell, what you're involved in. But what are some of the steps that you took, I guess, when you were, besides talking to your mom and your sisters? Did you let anybody else know? Did you change names to protect people? I mean, how did you really approach it?
Well, here's what happened. I told my aunt, I told my cousins, like, we're Jamaicans. We have family all over the place, in London, in Canada, everywhere. So I made it my point to call as many people as I could and let them know and ask them to spread the word. Not seeking permission, but, again, just letting them know that this is coming down the pike. It's unfiltered. I am not covering up anything anymore. And it took a friend of mine who's an attorney to say, Julie, you need to change your people's names at a minimum. Because originally I had everybody's real names. And so to protect the innocent people, their kids and their offspring and all that stuff, I changed the names of the perpetrators. My good uncles, I left their names. The good folks, the folks who've been good to me, their names have not been changed. The folks who've been nasty and horrible and downright, evil, their names have been changed, not so much to protect them, but to protect their children and their, and that kind of stuff. And again, liability, legal liability. So I had to do that, not because I wanted to, because I felt that in telling the story, the purpose of telling the story was to shed light on what is going on. And I felt sort of semi-hypocritical because I thought, wow, if I'm changing their names, then I'm still protecting them. And I later learned, that, again, for legal reasons and to protect their children and all that stuff, then I just had to, they know who they are. They absolutely
I dare say by your story, people are going to be able to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, they have.
Yeah. So you may have legally, and I get it. And, and I always say, changing somebody's name, doesn't change what they've done, and it certainly doesn't change your truth. And as long as you're telling your authentic truth, people will still, be moved and changed and touched by the story, even if they don't know the real person's name. But you've gone beyond that. This is not just you telling your story. This is you really stepping out and stepping into the forefront to change a lot of lives. Those who have already been abused and those, prevention of those who could be abused. So tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing now.
I founded an organization called Give Me Dignity because I think what abuse of any kind does, it strips people of their dignity. And I want to reinfuse that back into philanthropy and charity and all that stuff, is dignity. And so I started that organization because one reason is everywhere I went and every time I told my story, there were too many people saying it happened to me too. And as an individual, there are limitations in what I could do. But as an organization, we can affect policy changes and that kind of stuff. And so I went back to Jamaica and started talking with the powers that be, the policymakers, the politicians, in trying to really, get people to start talking about childhood sexual abuse because it is happening, and sweeping it on the rug and pretending it's not happening doesn't help anybody. And B, to help victims see that they can be survivors and they don't have to stay in victimhood. And that is probably, for me, besides the policy changes, is the actual helping and talking to people one-on-one and getting them to realize you're a human being behind the statistic. You have a heart, you have bad days, you have good days. You're a human being. You're not just a number. So for me, that part of it is just so absolutely rewarding. And I'm going to tell you a brief story. I was in Jamaica just recently talking to my high school after leaving there for a number of decades. And one of the things I told the audience is that, A, you have been through some things. B, you are going through some things. And C, you're going to go through some things. And those things should not ever define you. One of the things that came out of that is before I had an opportunity to finish, there's so many hands going up acknowledging their abuse. It's sad. It saddens me to see the number of people affected, but it was a certain sense of peace and a certain sense of joy that that number of people were able to say, you know what, I don't want to live in the darkness and the shame anymore. I don't want to live with the guilt and the blame anymore. It was really empowering and liberating that these young folks, that we're talking 14, 15-year-olds, men and women, acknowledging that the abuse happened and wanting to get help so that they don't have to remain imprisoned in victimhood. It's fantastic.
So I know that I've read where people have, I guess for lack of a better word, poo-pooed or tried to, diminish, I guess, the lasting effects of sexual abuse. What do you say to that?
That is one of my pet peeves. That is really one of my pet peeves, because what they don't, and particularly in Jamaica and in the islands, they'll literally say, it's just a little sex, get over it. It happened to me too, and look at me. And people think they're okay. It's not just a little sex. It really, really, really isn't. And if left untreated, it leads to all kinds of stuff, depression, the rage, that unexplained rage that you just pop for no reason. I guarantee if you search and go back and retrace, you'll find the root of it. Emotional distress, addiction, all kinds of addiction, promiscuity, prostitution, all these things are a direct result of being molested and having been exposed to childhood sexual abuse. It's not just a little sex. And when I hear people say that, it makes me cringe, because I know the hell that I've been through. I know the sheer hell that I've been through. Can't have a successful relationship. Can't trust anybody. Lack of self-worth, lack of self-esteem. Disinterested in things that were formerly, like school. I just stopped going to school. Like literally just stopped, because I'm like, what's the point? So when people say that it's just a little sex and you'll get over it, it makes me cringe, because too many people are living in hell, sheer hell, darkness. Folks have killed themselves. I mean, I read the statistics coming out of Jamaica and read the headlines of missing kids and kids committing suicide. They don't realize the impact it has on victims. They really don't realize, because I think if they do, they would treat it differently. That's one of my things. I just wanted people to say, listen, this is the betrayal of trust. Because oftentimes the folks who are doing the abusing are people that the kids know and trust. They're within the home. I think 80%, the statistics are ridiculous. 80% of perpetrators are known to the victims. So I want parents in particular to stop hiding under this misnomer that this is just a little sex. It's not. It's life altering. It really does changes one's course, and unless one is as determined as I was to not let it beat me, like I said, I sought therapy up and down the Eastern Seaboard, because I knew my life had more to it than what I was going through.
And I think the other part of it is that so many of the protectors, the protectors of the predators, blame the victims. And I don't know how you blame an 8-year-old for being, so sexy that they, their uncle has sex with them and, rapes them. But it's even in, you see it in bad movies. And the more I talk to people, especially, as my children are getting older, and you just, you want to be careful who's around them. I'm shocked at how many people say that, it happened to me and my mom didn't believe me. In fact, she got mad at me because she thought I was the cause.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you again, and one of the reasons, for this kind of relationship with my mother is that when my daughter fell victim and we later talked about it, and my mother had the nerve to say that my daughter, who was 11 years old at that time, by the way, she was 11 years old, and she said, well, she was there dancing, doing her dirty dance in front of the TV, and that's what seduced my sister's husband. And I was like, I can't tell you the shock. I can't tell you the shock at hearing something like that, and particularly when she failed to protect me. At least, my thought was, well, she's going to be there for my child, because, you live and you learn. But that is one of the worst things you can do to a child is to not believe them, and to think that an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old child can invite sex. It's just, for me, one of those things that makes my heart just bleed. Because, you know, instead of looking at these grown folks sexualizing kids, we're looking at the kids seducing grown folks. It is so counter. It is so counter to everything that is decent and right. And one of the things I do when I talk to folks is we literally stand up and do an exercise that I call my shame reassignment. Shame and blame reassignment, where we call out the names of the perpetrators and hand them over the shame and the guilt and the blame and all the things that come along with it. And you know, for however many years we carry it, we now pass the baton and ask them to carry their own shame, because it really isn't ours to bear. It's not for the victims to walk around for decades with. So that's been my thing. Shame reassignment. Here you go. This is yours. I've carried it for 30 years. Now it's yours. Good luck.
Wow. Well, I mean, I really could talk to you about this for a very long time. I'm fascinated not only with you, because I think you're a phenomenal person, but with your story and your mission. And I urge all of you guys listening to go check out the website givemedignity.org and learn all about what Julie is doing and support how you can, even if it's sharing it on social media. You know, she's on Facebook at Maybe God Was Busy, and also Give Me Dignity, and on Twitter at Give Me Dignity. But learn more about this and how we can step up and help protect those who we are charged with protecting, the innocent and not the predators. So, Julie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for what you're doing. Our kids deserve more folks like you.
Thank you. Julie Marie Mansfield. The book is Maybe God Was Busy, and you can get it on Amazon.com. And I encourage you. It's a brilliantly written book, and I think that it will move a lot of people to action.